Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about this one case that I found that was showing up a lot on my timeline, which was, I'm not really sure why. It's a little bit confusing because it is from 2021. Regardless, I found it interesting enough, and I also found that it has a petition that I'll link down below that I figured that it was worth talking about. Worth talking about generally, but specifically because there's a petition and there's something we could technically do. The thing about the articles in relation to this case is that a lot of the articles leave out a very significant part of context, which I'll explain as we go. But if you see that I'm citing a really random looking source, it's because I was looking for the articles with the most information. A lot of these are very blunt, but not even blunt in a helpful way, in a they're not telling you the whole fucking thing way. Mom who killed husband with boiling sugar water did it over claims he'd sexually abused her children. Corinna Smith's daughter alleged that she and her brother were repeatedly sexually abused by Michael Baines. Okay, so for some reason my camera pieced out, but a lot of the articles were basically ignoring the fact that the entire reason that this mother threw the boiling water with the sugar in it on her husband was because she had found out that he had in fact, allegedly, sexually abused their children. So in a lot of the articles, it was framed as, oh, she was angry because of rumors. And it's like, okay, well, it's a lot more complicated than that, and it's a lot more serious than a rumor. So I just wanted to clarify that, because in all the articles I found prior to this one, they weren't really outlining why it is that she did it. They were just saying she did this, end of. A mom who murdered her husband by pouring boiling hot sugar water over him as he slept did it after hearing allegations that he abused her children. Corinna Smith killed her 80-year-old husband, Michael Baines, by mixing 3 bags of sugar with boiling water so she could inflict maximum pain. Mr. Baines suffered burns to more than a third of his body, and after numerous operations and skin grafts, he died at Wiston Hospital a month later last July, as reported by the Liverpool Echo. The 59-year-old mom was jailed on Friday, but her lawyer argued that she should be handed a much reduced sentence due to the sudden grief upon learning of the claims of historical abuse. I really don't even know how much time she should be given beyond a slap on the wrist, and I don't know if that sounds extreme, I don't know if that's controversial. Realistically though, I don't know what kind of response they'd expect most parents to have upon finding out about such a thing. So there's that. I also wonder how much you can also potentially claim some level of self-defense, because it's like learning that someone is a dangerous predator. So attacking them in some kind of way, some people might deem as justifiable. I have no reason to defend the husband. Of course, the daughter could be lying about the abuse. Anyone can always be lying about anything at any given point. Do I think that's probable? No. And also, I don't really understand the life sentence in terms of, did they look at whether he actually did anything? Like, did they interview? Did they look for something? Because, you know, certainly this is not the type of thing that you just have proof for, that you're just like, hey, look, here's, you know, like a copy of an email or something. But I'm wondering, did they even check to see if there was anything traceable, you know, anything? So I'm also wondering how much of his side of the responsibility was dismissed. Does that make sense? Because in all of this, like, yeah, you can consider her guilty or whatever else you want, but can we talk about what he supposedly did? Because that's part of why all of this happened, right? Because if he hadn't allegedly abused the kids, she wouldn't have reacted this way. So did he do that? I don't know. That seems kind of like an important puzzle piece. But like I said, the articles don't really cover that for the most part, so I don't know. Mary Loram QC had tried to convince a jury that Smith should be convicted of manslaughter instead of murder because of a loss of control brought on by the sudden yet unproven revelations on June 14th last year. Her daughter had divulged information about Michael Baines after a trip to Liverpool as they shared a glass of wine together, relating to their childhood. She claimed she and her brother had been repeatedly sexually abused by Mr. Baines over many years, sending Smith into a rage and prompting her to link her son's tragic death in 2007, when he took his own life, to the alleged abuse. If you look at the context and all of the circumstances, I mean, even if she hadn't lost her son, it really doesn't surprise me that a parent would react this way. I think anyone who cares about anyone else could react this way. Again, that's why I'd like to know, did they investigate this man? Did they even try to look? Because they say that it's unproven that the kids were sexually assaulted, but did they check? Or is it just like the kids said, we don't have any concrete proof that maybe even the police could find that the kids wouldn't even know to think of? And I know that they're not kids anymore, but still. It does disturb me that there is a lot more emphasis on what the woman did and not emphasis on how it's a response to what was claimed happened, right? So like what she did is directly tied to him allegedly being a predator, basically. So you'd think you'd want to check if he's a predator actually, no? It was heard at Chester Crown Court how the mom had always blamed herself for her son's death in his mid-20s, but Judge Amanda Yip, QC, told her as she sat in the dock she should not. And this part too, obviously, your own child taking their lives and you blaming yourself for years. I don't know if you can remove the blame, because I've read of a lot of parents who do take on the blame of abuser parents, you know, saying, oh, my partner was abusing them, I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. So like, I don't think that this solves anything in any which way, but surely it would account for an additional level of rage, because it's not just your kids allegedly went through something, it's they went through something and did not survive the thing. Miss Lorem said the 59-year-old acted due to hearing how her husband of 38 years had sexually assaulted her children, and one of her children had gone on to take his own life in his 20s. The killing at the couple's Highfield Road home in Neston, Cheshire was based on the anguish of her daughter, the barrister added, and the mental process from a realization such as this from one's child. The starting point of a minimum sentence of 15 years should be considerably lower, Miss Lorem argued, and told the trial when Smith's daughter gave evidence was upsetting for anyone to witness. The lawyer described how Smith had brought Mr. Baines into her family, a much older partner with whom she had a good relationship, but which displayed problems as he got older and the age gap became more apparent, and how his actions had, quote-unquote, destroyed her family. And Miss Lorem urged the judge to allow Michael Baines, who was Corinna and Michael Sr.'s only son together, to have his mom back in the future as soon as possible by keeping the minimum term as short as possible, having now lost his dad. Judge Yip handed Smith a minimum of 12 years behind bars and spoke of her tragic son. He had been troubled before his death and had been to prison for a serious assault. So I don't really know why he'd have to bring up that the son was troubled before. Like, yeah, I get it. You can try to make the argument he didn't kill himself because he was sexually assaulted. That's something we'll never know regardless. But I really do find it, generally speaking, in poor taste to bring up that someone had been troubled, quote unquote, whatever that means. Like, I don't know what the context of the serious assault was. I can't judge anything like that. I don't know what the assault was, what happened. I have no idea. In this context, I don't really find it necessary to say, but maybe that's just me and my particular sensibilities. You and other family members could not understand why Craig's life had taken this course. He had told you that the man he attacked had been a pedophile and that he had touched him sexually. The day before Craig's death, he had been in some distress and said, "Mom, he's a pedophile." You understand him to be referring to the man he had assaulted. Craig seemed happier the next day, and you did not explore what he said further. This is something that you have felt guilty about ever since. The judge added, "Your husband was an old man. He was not the best of health, and you were his carer. He was in bed asleep at the time of the attack. I take into account his vulnerability in your domestic circumstances. The deliberate mixing of the hot sugar solution involved a degree of planning and sustained action. It can only have been designed to cause significant physical suffering, which is exactly what resulted. In short, it was a particularly nasty way to inflict serious harm." A particularly nasty way to inflict serious harm. Like, I don't know what it is here, but it just seems like nobody's really taking into account what the allegations are. Right? Because if we're talking about a nasty way to inflict serious harm, wouldn't we say that sexual abuse is that also? So, you know, like, we're really focusing on what she did, which, like I said, that's why they're in court. Fine. But we also have to trace, like, the motive, right? Like, we can't just say, oh, she just did the thing based on a rumor, so bye. This is frustrating. Set against this, I sentence you on the basis that your intention was to cause serious harm rather than to kill. Further, that intention was formed while you were in a state of distress. This was not a long-held and carefully formed plan. You made use of materials you already had at home. I accept that your initial reaction had been to call the police and that the intent to harm your husband only developed later when you were home and dwelling on what you had been told. The background to the offense does provide mitigation. It was accepted at trial that you believed what you were told by your daughter, that your husband had abused her and your deceased son. You connected his death with the abuse that was alleged. These revelations were truly shocking for you, and they lie behind what happened. That was clear evidence of your distress before and after you attacked your husband. Crown Advocate Jane Morris of CPS Mercy Cheshire said Corinna Baines killed Michael Baines in a particularly brutal and painful way. She confessed to the manslaughter of her husband, but the CPS refused to accept that. The CPS case was that her actions were deliberate and considered. She was clearly upset about the dispute between herself, her daughter, and her husband, but the evidence demonstrated that she was in control and acted in anger when she poured the lethal mixture over her husband and wanted to exact vengeance. The Crown Prosecution Service said that she intended either to kill Michael or to cause him really serious harm, and so pursued prosecution for murder. The jury has agreed with us and found her guilty. This is a tragic case that has devastated the family of Mr. and Mrs. Baines, and our thoughts remain with them. Again, potentially unpopular, but I really don't see a massive, massive problem with her reaction, and that's probably something that's wrong with me. But when it comes to children, I really don't have any room for like interpretation. Like, it's either true or it's false. And like I said, it's really hard for them to have proof of what happened. But if we're going under the belief that what the daughter said to Corinna was true, it's not surprising, and I don't feel like it's super far away from being justified. Am I wrong on that? You guys can let me know, but honestly, we've seen how the police deals with these types of matters, like here, so it doesn't even surprise me that she'd let the anger take over and act based on that, because if you're convinced that the police isn't gonna do shit, you're gonna do something, right? Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.